Attorney General, it's good to see you. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Oh, thank you, everyone. And how you kicked her off was so wrong.
That's right. I feel bad. You know, before we start, on a serious note, you were originally going to be here 11 to 12. You had a delay till 1 to 2. I know you wanted to share with us where you were this morning.
Yeah, I was actually coming from Worcester, an officer who passed away in Worcester, who was a sergeant, David Leto. So it was just sad. He leaves behind a wife and 2 kids and just an incredible community. So Worcester turned out, and, you know, an officer who worked with folks in the community, young people, was a diversity inclusion officer. And so people are working hard every day, including folks in law enforcement. And just wanted to be there to support the community.
He was 42. Is that what
he
I
was?
read?
Yeah, young man. And the
really
children were
sad.
Pretty young as well.
Yeah. Well, we're glad you made it.
Yeah,
Thank you so
count
much
your
for
blessings,
being here.
you know?
Yes, indeed.
So, Attorney General Campbell, I wanted to ask you about, you got a youth agenda here. Tell us what you're doing in terms of, we've heard these horrible stories over and over and over again about bullying, harassing, hate in school sports. What are you doing about that?
So there are some regional trainings already happening that we kicked off to deal with hate in school and in sports as well. One priority for the office, I want to stress, will be the wellness and well-being of our kids. I'm a mom of 2 young boys. There are probably several caregivers and parents in this space. Uptick in depression, anxiety, suicide or suicidal thoughts is on the rise. And so what can the AG's office do to support our young people? These trainings are in partnership with a whole host of stakeholders and school districts and in partnership with Northeastern. And they've already kicked off. They're going to be regional all across the Commonwealth, and training school administrators and others in ways in which to address bullying in the context of sports, but also thinking about how we can expand that type of work is really exciting.
Do you spend time? I mean, this is great that you're doing this, and great for all the participants.
It is great.
But in all there's like an epidemic in the state. There was almost every couple of weeks from Wellesley fans, Duxbury kids, Danvers hockey players. I mean, I could go down a list. This wasn't an outlier here or there. There was a trend in high school sports, either fans or the young players themselves. What are people thinking this comes from?
That's right. And I actually want the office and us to frame it broader than that. Mental health concerns, it's been an epidemic in this country and in Massachusetts for a long time, long before COVID. In the context of sports, you're seeing mental health concerns, bullying, a whole bunch of things that we're actively addressing, and the office has been addressing for some time through the Civil Rights Division, the Children's Justice Unit. But I want us to seriously take a more holistic approach at looking at how we can really get folks, not just young people, adults included, access to the mental health services they deserve, address conversations and get involved in conversations around costs, access, equity, reimbursement rates, stigma. If you are feeling depression, anxiety, I was just saying this to a couple of folks in my office, there should be no shame to be able to share that in your workplace, and that you are going to get medication or all the supports that you need in a workplace, and an employer is going to support you in those efforts. There should be no stigma around that. No one should be going through those things alone, because we know it can escalate to other things. So the office can do a lot. Social media companies, big part of the work of the office as well, and will continue to be to look at how we address mental health concerns to make sure our kids are doing well.
Speaking of social media and kids, obviously you know there was the TikTok hearing where there was...
Is he still testifying?
Bipartisan assault on the head of TikTok. The President of the United States has basically said, sell to an American company or I'm going to argue that you be banned. Part of the argument against TikTok is not just the national security and the lack of data privacy, but you hearken back to what Frances Hogan was saying about Instagram and her testimony and the impact on self-worth and feeling about it. What do you think the impact of a TikTok is on almost its exclusively young participants or users? And do you subscribe to the president's approach to this?
Well, obviously, you have the company exec testifying before Congress with respect to ownership of TikTok and relationship with China, privacy concerns, sharing of data. And it's too narrowly focused. Where the AG's office is focused is broader, and rightfully so. It is definitely on privacy and your personal information, and how these platforms can use your information maybe against you in some way, and what they're...
apart from the Chinese issue?
That's right. That's right. And what they're doing with this information, and that's not just in the context of TikTok. That's Facebook, Meta, Google, you name it. We have a whole division within the AG's office dealing with data privacy concerns. What we're also focused on in the context of social media companies, TikTok included, is the effect they're having on young people when it comes to self-worth, depression, anxiety, suicide, the ways in which they design their apps to be addictive to young people, spending hours on end on these platforms, which there are stories and reports out there that we're reviewing that sort of suggest and maybe pinpoint in more detail or evidence of it having a detrimental effect on our young people, including young girls, and an uptick in what we're seeing with respect to young girls. So this is multi-state
Do you subscribe to the Biden ultimatum here? Are you supportive of what the president's saying? Sell or risk being banned?
I'm following a little bit more. I actually think, with all due respect to our president, focus on that, but expand the conversation. If you have TikTok there before you, it's not just TikTok. It is American-based companies, too, that are having a detrimental effect on our young people. Right now, the office is involved in a multi-state investigation with other states looking at the effect these platforms have on our young people, looking at how they're using our personal information, how they design algorithms and these apps to be addictive. And that's the broader conversation. There's a national focus, rightfully so, President, but there are local issues right here that we absolutely need to address with a sense of urgency, especially when it comes to our young people and their mental health.
I have one more thing I want to raise before we get to the calls. The line's filled up in about 30 seconds, so people do want to talk to you. We'll do this in a second. I want to do a hypothetical with you, and I know politicians hate hypotheticals, but you're sort of new to the job, so I hope you'll allow me to do this. It's hypothetical, but not that hypothetical. Let's take Kevin Hayden, who is the DA for Suffolk County. And let's assume he is rumored to be contemplating prosecuting me for something. And I say out loud how disgraceful it is, how it's a witch hunt, how there are going to be protests and violence if he comes after me. And then I go on social media and I post a photograph of Kevin Hayden's head. And next to Kevin Hayden's head is me holding a baseball bat pointing at Kevin Hayden's head. Do you know what I'm referencing? I'm referencing the post from Donald Trump with Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan DA's head, with Donald Trump holding a baseball bat directed at his head right next to it. What are you going to say?
And you should add, perhaps, that, all due respect, Jim, Donald Trump has a lot more
I'd
followers
say he is.
than
like
you
millions.
do.
Is that a crime? If that happened in your jurisdiction, I did it to Kevin Hayden, would I be committing a crime?
It depends.
What does it depend upon?
It depends on what obviously the laws are in New York and what they are here. It depends.
Could I get away with that?
Because you're posing a hypothetical, I want to be careful in my response to your hypothetical.
Should he be able to get away with that?
Well, President Trump?
Yeah.
Well, I will say I have many concerns with President Trump and support what my AG Tish James is doing in New York with respect to Trump and going after him for fraud and other things as well. And then, of course, she made referrals and is working with Bragg, of course, because she has no criminal authority as AG in New York. So they're doing what they need to do, and I'm waiting for the indictment like everyone else. A lot of it is under secrecy, so I don't know all the details on the criminal side. Have been following it more on the civil side because of AG James. But it's a hypothetical. There are more things that you would look into. Has there been text messages or other conversations between the two parties? Has there been harassment? There's so many other things you can look into, so I don't want to respond to a hypothetical. What I will say is our office is very serious about looking at harassment or any type of assault or anything like that and making sure that folks feel as though our office is not only responsive but will take action when appropriate.
Fair enough. Let's get to the calls. Jocelyn, you're in Marlborough. You're on with Andrea Campbell, the Attorney General of Massachusetts. Welcome.
Hello?
Hi.
Oh, it's Jasper. I'm sorry.
Jasper, that was not even close, but thank you. My apologies. Hi, Jasper.
Nice
You're
to hear
on
you
with the
again,
Attorney
Jim.
General. Hi.
So it's fun you guys are mentioning that because I'm an activist, and the reason I'm calling is in regards to doxing. I wanted to know what the AG's position on doxing and in terms of cybercrime and how that goes.
She broke up.
Sorry.
You asked the question again. We lost you for a second, Jesper. You said you want to know what the AG's position on doxing is. Is that what you said?
Yes, especially because it has been a concern here in Massachusetts.
How about it? Doxing.
What is doxing?
Go ahead, Jasper. Explain what you're asking about.
When people basically let a lot of personal information online,
Leave a
their
lot of
name
personal.
usually.
Yes.
Yeah, they put your phone number, your address, all this kind of stuff, which, frankly,
Yeah.
you can get really easily anyway. But it's to retaliate. Is that what you're talking about, Jasper?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, I see. Again, it depends, right? There are different circumstances. My information is public just as an elected official, right? So in essentially all of it, the things I may have deemed to be personal before are not anymore because of the public role. But I will say when folks have concerns about what is being shown up on social media platforms with respect to any type of issue and they feel like they're being harassed or something else or retaliated against and people are using that information, call us. Let us know. But it's hard to actually, in going back to your hypothetical, it's hard to have specifics with respect to a response given that every case is different. And the job of our office and our team is to make sure we're looking at the specifics and where there are actionable items, we are taking swift action to address.
I should just say the difference between, and you, Marjorie, said, and you said you're available. When someone is publishing this personal information, I think the underlying premise is there's malicious intent. I mean, I think that's what Jasper is talking about.
It could be. And then we should look into that.
Jasper,
That's right.
thank you for the call. We appreciate it. Sorry I butchered your name. 877-301.
And now I know the terminology doxing.
Doxing.
Yes.
Jared and my data privacy officer would be like, oh, he's an expert.
We have several people asking about these letters you get in the mail, maybe even phone calls to pressuring people to switch over their electric service with these short, low-price promo rates.
Competitive electric suppliers.
And then as soon as you sign up for the promo, according to these people who are texting, they zing you with these extremely high prices.
Mm-hmm.
What's that about?
Major issue. Folks in the Energy Environmental Bureau have been out there talking to folks to make them aware about the scams within this industry. And these are folks who not only send you letters, they knock on your doors. Actually, one day I was leaving a phone call or a meeting, and someone was aggressively knocking on my door trying to sell me a new form of electricity. And the problem is the rates are higher, folks are paying higher, sometimes in the long term. They disproportionately affect low-income residents and residents of color in terms of their bills. They end up paying more. So we actually have legislation before the State House right now that I've filed since taking office to prevent these companies from enrolling new customers who are hoping to get that through this session. Critically important as we use every other tool to go after them for the scams and other consumer protection issues. But a major concern, beware of folks who are trying to sell you these things. Read the fine print on our website. We try to offer some guidance. Reach out to us, including whether it's solar companies, other things you're signing up for, and you need to have some more guidance. We offer that guidance for folks to review, which is really important before you sign a contract.
That's the voice of Andrea Campbell. She's the Attorney General of the Commonwealth, here for this hour to take your questions and thoughts. Jim in Medford, you're next on Boston Public Radio with the Attorney General. Welcome.
Hi.
Hi, Jim.
I like a lot. Thank you. Hi. Enjoy your show very much when I can catch it. A lot of times
It's even great when you don't catch it. Trust me. Go ahead.
Well, thank you, Jim. Thank you, Jim, for tuning in.
What's up, Jim?
So my question is, I'm a psychologist, and I noticed during the pandemic, obviously, that, we had transitioned largely to telemedicine. Many patients, would like to pay their co-pays by, credit card or other types of balances. And, the credit card companies, or at least the processors, charge you an extra fee if you don't have the credit card in hand, I presume because there's increased risk. But throughout the pandemic, obviously nobody could have their credit card in hand, and we all had to pay that premium, and perhaps across other industries as well. And I'm wondering if there's any kind of consideration of kind of a windfall profit issue for that. Because it really, it seems like they're charging you for something that you can't possibly do.
Well, Thank you, Jim, for calling in.
Thanks, Jim.
It's something we can look into. I hadn't heard the issue before. Just obviously on telehealth and other things like that, the office is actively involved in looking at how you continue to afford access to all types of health services through these various modes of service. So can definitely look into it. I will say that credit card companies have been on the radar of the office most recently in the context, just in the last couple of weeks, of guns. Visa, Discover, American
What's the
Express,
issue?
MasterCard, they all committed. Right now, when you go to a store, there are codes that are attached to vendors that are used by the credit card companies to track. They gather data, et cetera. They agreed to do the same for gun stores, but then were lobbied by the gun industry and walked back that commitment and that promise to track those purchases, which are critically important. I'm saying if you can track us going to Walmart and buying milk, why not guns? Which gives law enforcement critical tools to not only look at where people are buying, if gun hoarding is happening, but also if someone illegally purchased a weapon, used it, and in some horrific crime, a law enforcement can go after them and hold them accountable. So just let a letter with other attorneys general across the country to push the credit card companies to keep their promise on that code. So we're following and in contact with them on a whole host of things, but this is a major issue. People say, well, what can I do in the context of gun violence? And leave it to certain stakeholders or just law enforcement to respond, or those community-based organizations that are breaking cycles of violence. Credit card companies can play a role too.
You know, before we get to, we have some audience questions. I'm going to get to them in a second, but as long as you're talking about guns, I know that you're establishing this gun enforcement unit because apparently lots of police departments don't know that they're supposed to do inspections of gun shops.
It's for a whole host of reasons. So right now we are starting an internal working group as well as actively reaching out to law enforcement and many stakeholders across the state to set up a gun enforcement unit and a police accountability unit. And for us, they go hand in hand. They're about, one is, trust in law enforcement. You need law enforcement to be a part of that, including a police accountability unit. And when it comes to guns, gun trafficking, major issue, ghost guns. People are making guns out of 3D materials these days. So how do we have a one-stop shop in the office to share best practices? We have folks in our state police unit that are doing trainings every day with local law enforcement. We need legislative solutions as well to keep folks from being able to manufacture these weapons in Massachusetts and sell them. In addition, this same unit can also address gun violence in the community and make sure that survivors are getting the resources they need. So there's a whole host of ways this gun enforcement unit and, of course, a police accountability unit could really spearhead the work nationally. And obviously, we have some of the most progressive laws when it comes to guns in Massachusetts, but we're still behind in many ways because of ghost guns. And because of the recent decision out of the Supreme Court, I'm already having to file briefs to protect our common sense gun laws here in Massachusetts.
Supreme Court decision about New York.
And about brewing. That's right.
Okay.
I think we have Jennifer at the microphone. She wanted to speak to the Attorney General
Hi.
Campbell.
Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, good afternoon, Attorney General.
Good to see you.
And Jim. My family and I remain sickened by my brother Justin's egregious killing.
That's right.
And the continued absence of anyone in a position of authority willing to enact a warranted independent investigation. As long as law enforcement is investigating themselves, their colleagues, and have a close working relationship with district attorneys, we will not get to accountability. This is all we are asking for. The Norfolk DA's office used Boston police detectives and Mass state troopers to investigate their own colleagues, and in just 30 days, they called their investigation. They concluded that 31 bullets at Justin while he was on the ground bleeding with nothing in his hands, they concluded that was reasonable. Most of those 6 officers that shot him met as a group before they were even interviewed 5 days after. There couldn't be a clearer conflict of interest. Given your experience, I remain hopeful that you will stand up for people like Justin, for the people who are voiceless. My question to you is twofold. How do you see your office addressing when officers use deadly force in this not so transparent process that is occurring in those investigations? And then also, obviously, I'd like to meet with you.
I know, and it's good
Jennifer,
to see
thank
you,
you.
and I know you and your father continue to go through a lot. And I don't want to minimize that. And I know my office has been in touch, and it's unfortunate because I couldn't make a particular meeting, but I don't want to discount the leadership and the team that works in my office. They work hand in hand with me. So if folks, and I want to say this even publicly, if folks don't get an immediate meeting with me because the work can be so overwhelming given where I am, when I tell my team to meet with a family or resident, they bring as much power as I would bring to that meeting to try to resolve an issue swiftly and with a sense of urgency and integrity. And they're dedicated to public service. I just want to name that. So we're working on that, and I hope
understand.
Pat and Ron Tier. So
We've got sisters going on here.
I know, and we share the loss of a brother under different circumstances. Yeah. The other piece is there's a lot the office can do. I want to first talk about posts, right? We have the Post Commission, which really, if resourced right, and I have some briefings coming up with them about how the AG's office needs to work with Post to look at cases of involving individual officers. So cases where there's an individual officer involved and folks have concerns, Post really is the right place. We could get referrals from them. And so the question is how in the office we make sure that we have adequate resources and attorneys for those types of referrals. So we're working on that. Individual cases, Post, AG's office working partnership. The police accountability unit that I proposed that we are working on setting up with this gun enforcement unit, 2 separate units, but they go hand in hand, is to address those systemic cases. The recent changes in some of our laws here in Massachusetts around police reform gave the AG's office incredible authority to look at pattern and practice investigation, so that's systemic stuff in a very meaningful way. This is the time to actually be more intentional of those types of matters. There are some in the office that are ongoing, but just a few, not enough, I think, given the authority. And also, we don't have enough attorneys. So this unit is someone to own that while we expand out that work to really get at what the spirit of that police reform law was about, to look at the systemic issues across Massachusetts and any police department where folks raise concerns about bias, over abuse of power, over use of force, et cetera. This unit would be designed to do that. And why I'm pushing hard to set up a unit is so that it's not just some random cases that come through some random calls or referrals. It's more proactive outreach from the office, working with law enforcement on those types of cases and concerns that the office continues to get from different municipalities and residents across the state.
Jennifer, thank you for being here. We appreciate it.
Just a quick follow-up on this.
Yes.
It does seem kind of crazy to me that we ever had the system where the police investigate their fellow officers, and even the district attorney, because as Jennifer pointed out, Marion Ryan or Hayden, whoever it is, they have close relationships with the cops under their jurisdiction. So it seems to me it's hard for them to do an independent investigation when these are essentially their colleagues. You're a lawyer. You must have thought about this.
Well, absolutely. And I come obviously from the city council, chairing the city council committee on public safety and criminal justice, work with BPD all the time on a whole host of issues. And those conflicts sometimes exist or they're inherent. This is why I think the Police Accountability Unit is so critical.
Yep.
Right now, the office will get referrals from our district attorneys. I just was meeting with all of them the other day, every single district attorney I met with at their association meeting, to think about ways we can actually partner in the work together. That's critically important, taking guns and drugs and fentanyl and everything off our streets. But the other piece is we are getting cases from these district attorneys when they run into a conflict. And we will review and take some of those matters, but we can also, I think, in more proactive ways in certain contexts through a set-up unit, be proactive in engaging with district attorneys and others to say, there may be some conflicts there, and our door is open to take these types of police accountability cases and to do it in a more systemic way and to be a one-stop shop for folks and departments all across the Commonwealth in this context.
Can I do a follow-up briefly, a couple of follow-ups to the whole police issue, this inherent conflict that you seem to agree is a serious issue. You mentioned Marion Ryan. My understanding is what Marion Ryan did in the case of the young man, Syed Faisal, who was shot and killed by a police officer in my hometown of Cambridge, was ultimately she requested an inquest, which I think she says she does, an independent investigation whenever there's a police-involved shooting. Why shouldn't that be the policy? Why shouldn't that be the default so that there is public trust in an outcome. Even if you, as a leader, or John Doe, as a citizen, is convinced that DA can be fair investigating that cop, why not remove any appearance of improper relationship and automatically have statutes that say it should be removed to independent investigators?
Well, it could be. On the statute side, we'd have to ask the legislature about that. I think with conversations with the district attorneys that I'm looking to establish and build those relationships up, we can have conversations about doing that without a statute.
Would you urge them to do that?
I think they should review it and look into it. I know I've never been in the district attorney's office. I've never worked in a police department, but on the council side, worked closely, when I was on the city council, worked closely with BPD and with Rollins at the time, who was our district attorney. And you could see the conflicts. You work so closely together to investigate and resolve a matter. Each district attorney is different. They're obviously duly elected, but it is an opportunity to have conversations with folks about that. But one thing I know that we are well situated to do is to establish this police accountability unit, to go out there to have conversations with law enforcement, which I'm actively doing right now, including district attorneys, to say there's a role to play in helping us set this up. But more importantly, we are creating a space to bring these types of cases so that we can resolve those conflicts and hopefully get justice and accountability and transparency in those cases.
One last police question. You're talking about where people can go, the post-commission, it's called,
Yes.
right? And things like that, or the office you're trying to construct. We read a story in the Globe the other day. Mayor Wu was with us a couple of weeks ago and talked a lot the day after 2 cops were fired. Abbassiano, who had been at January 6th and was tweeting about the vice president being treasonous. The Catone, who had been involved in these anti-vax things, and we learned a lot more yesterday that she was doing, including without permission taking away the coverage for the mayor and a whole variety of things. And this guy Geary, who was fired last year, who was using a term about rats get bats. A guy by the name of Diaz, who's a law enforcement person, went to January 6th with Abbassiano, apparently had the same intent, etc. The one difference, which caused him not to be disciplined at all, was that he didn't do any outward thing like a tweet like Abbassiano did. If I tried to put myself in the position of somebody living in Boston with Officer Diaz. I live in Cambridge. If Officer Diaz was a cop in my neighborhood and I knew he had gone to a rally, the purpose of which was to overturn a democratic election in the United States, I don't know if I'd feel very comfortable having him protect me. If someone feels that way, what recourse do they have? Because the commissioner decided Officer Diaz should continue in his job.
Well, trust, and trust. When this police accountability unit or anything we're talking about, it's about ensuring trust. And that's just not for the community, that's also for law enforcement. You build trusting relationships, you're more effective in your jobs. When I was on the city council, I already have a record and a public statement on all of this. As chair of that committee on public safety, was calling for BPD to release the name and names and any investigation details related to any officer who participated in that insurrection. One thing that was very unsettling and disappointing was how long it took for information to be released. We had hearings on this, and we would just sort of get the runaround. So I think transparency is critical. You have information, release it. Sometimes you can't release it in certain stages because it's an active investigation, but you can tell folks you're investigating, right? And so I was pushing then, and I think anyone who participated in an insurrection that was more than just about overturning an election, it was about the foundation of our democratic institutions in this country, should be fired. It's as simple as that. And was on the record saying that back then. That doesn't change because I'm in a new position now. You are held and should be held to a high standard when you are a public servant, serving the public, earning their tax-paying dollars, and doing the work of public service.
So should there be a second look at Officer Diaz based upon what you just said?
Anyone who participated in that, actively participated in an insurrection of this country, should be fired.
Let's go to Chuck in Holbrook. Chuck, you're on the phone with the Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Andrea Joy Campbell. Go ahead.
Hi, Chuck.
Hello, Chuck.
Hi. Thanks for letting me on here. Let me turn this down. I wanted to talk about the recent letter which the AG is threatening to 2 towns that do not create the MBTA zoning district. So what I think is this law was written by applying, the same broad brush to all 175 towns that it affects, without consideration given to the unique issues that happen within our individual towns. And I want to talk about Holbrook in particular. The town is only 7 square miles, has a population of 11,000. We're a pretty dense town. We're not a city, but we're a pretty densely populated town. The median value of a house in our town, the median household income, the number of college grads in town are all below those figures for the county, Norfolk County, and for the state.
Hey, Chuck, if I may,
Yeah.
to shorten it only because for the people who don't live in Holbrook, I believe where you're going is you believe that the same rule should not apply to all 177 communities subject to law. Is that where you're going? And you want to know if there can be some accommodation? Is that the gist of your call?
Well, that's the gist of, somewhat the gist of my call, but I also think the whole law should be rescinded.
Well, okay. Well, it is the law of the Commonwealth. We talked to Charlie Baker a lot before he signed it. Let's hear what the Attorney General has to say. Can you explain the background for those who don't know what you did? Yeah.
So it is the law of the Commonwealth. It was the law before I became Attorney General, and it was signed by Governor Baker and, of course, worked with the legislature before. Bipartisan effort to help address the housing crisis in the Commonwealth. And if you live here, you know it is extremely expensive to live in Massachusetts. We are one of the most expensive states to live in, especially if you're an elder person. And so the MBTA Communities Law was designed and intended to say to towns that have MBTA resources, stations, infrastructures in their communities, there are 177 in the Commonwealth, they have an obligation to create multifamily housing around those stations, which makes total sense. You are benefiting in many ways from this public good, and so how do you help us address the housing crisis? A lot of debate and conversation. I was not privy to that, but it is the law of the land, the law of Massachusetts,
Right.
the land, Massachusetts, the land. And so what was critical for me, along with the team, was to make sure that folks had guidance around the implementation of this law. Not everyone, so many folks were confused. Local municipalities, leaders, advocates, many folks were confused about what the obligation is. And we made it crystal clear in the advisory put out from the office, you have to comply. Compliance is not an option. And if you do not comply with this law, you could lose funding from the state for housing projects. You could be in violation of state and other federal fair housing laws. But our goal putting this out was not to say we're coming after you immediately to enforce you and bring your municipality to court. It is to work and offer technical assistance along with DHCD to these municipalities to bring them into compliance.
And they each come up with their own plans.
That's exactly
It's not
right.
one
And so
size fits all.
to Chuck's point, it isn't. And if anything, already elected officials and others are reaching out saying, thank you for letting us know we didn't have an option here, we have to comply, but now we have questions on how we do that. DHCD and others have a whole host of resources, including other community-based organizations, to help municipalities, planners, et cetera, develop this type of housing, which isn't just for families and making sure you can afford to live here. This affects all of us in our economy, and we have been stressing that. And also, if we want to reach our climate goals, transportation goals, other things as well, it's all connected. And so we're in contact with municipalities to offer up assistance, technical assistance, to work with them. And it's really important and essential to address the housing crisis in the Commonwealth.
We're going to take a quick break, but I should note before we go that I read a story from our colleagues at GBH here that reported that, things are really bad when the complaints about housing in the Commonwealth are more than those that are about car dealerships. So
Used
things
cars.
are really at a desperate point. We're talking to the Commonwealth's Attorney General, Andrea Campbell. She's going to be with us till the top of the hour. You can reach her at 877-301-8970. We'll try to take as many calls and texts as we can. We are broadcasting live at the Boston Public Library. You're listening to 89.7 GBH Boston Public Radio.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and at youtube.com/GBH News. If you're just tuning in, the Attorney General is kind enough to be giving us an hour every month for you to ask questions, make comments. Andrea Campbell is here till 2 o'clock at the Boston Public Library, and her number for texting and calling is 877-301 8970.
You know, Attorney General, we talked about this with our listeners the other day, that in the last few days, it seems like, especially with March Madness, every time we turn on the television, there's another ad with Gronk or with, some other, David Ortiz, some famous athlete or some famous comedians. Lenny Clark is on there telling us all that we should start gambling immediately. And I know your office has voiced some concern about this deluge of ads. What's the deal?
I just have to go back. I was looking for the woman's name who called in. I think it was Jasper, who talked about doxing. And I was like,
yes.
Jasper, yeah.
And then part of that is because I'm on social media from the office point of view, but I don't keep those apps on
You're
my phone.
turning red, by the way. Are you aware of
No,
that?
that's a good idea.
No,
not to keep
I don't
those
keep
apps
those
on your
apps
phone.
on my phone. But one of my team members and lawyers from the office added a point, which is important, is doxing from a harassment standpoint, which I said, it's one thing to just put your information out there. You have to have a larger context. But from the harassment standpoint, is illegal. But again, if folks feel as though people are using their information or posting it for different reasons, reach out to our office and we'll take it case by case. But my folks are on it. Mobile sports betting, everyone I'm sure has seen the ads, seen them, have them pop up on your
Who'd you sign
your
up
phones.
with?
Who'd I sign up with?
Which mobile app did you sign up with?
Oh, none.
None, okay.
None.
I think
None.
that's wise.
Although I went to Princeton, and so for the NCAA,
Oh, that's right.
Oh, my God.
people were like,
16.
Princeton's doing amazing. And I thought, I should have bet on them.
And they've got that kid that's not only a big basketball star, but a big academic star,
is
an economics
incredible.
major. I heard him interviewed this morning. He was
It's
great.
quite amazing. So people were literally calling and texting me as if I worked at Princeton University and saying, congratulations, this is amazing.
It was a great jump shot, Attorney General. Everybody's talking about it.
It's amazing. It's exciting. So I will just say on the sports betting issue, obviously sports betting is the law of Massachusetts and the Commonwealth. And we've made that clear that we're not going to stand in the way of the implementation of that. What we are concerned about and want to make sure that we're doing from the AG's office is protecting consumers, protecting our young people. We already know it can be an area that can lead to addiction, which can, of course, addictive use, which can lead to mental health concerns, substance use disorders, you name it. And so our job is to protect the consumers. So we've been going back and forth with the Gaming Commission, as well as operators, to make sure there are parameters in place to protect young people who are under 21, to make sure they are not betting, and to make sure that things are designed in such a way to not target or advertise or market to them. We have also been making sure that these platforms and the ways in which they are designed are not utilizing people's personal information against them and targeting folks in different ways, which can lead them to either gamble more or use their information for other purposes. And we're also making sure that folks who benefit, so in the news lately, third-party advertisers, folks who are used to market to market gambling and to say, go to DraftKings or whoever and place a bet, that we're also protecting folks from that type of behavior, and that those advertisers shouldn't profit off of encouraging folks to place specific bets, et cetera. So we are trying to do our best to work with the Gaming Commission on these regulations to protect the consumer, because we know what's to come, especially when you're already looking at the rollout and the devastating effects it can have on
Doesn't
residents.
the legislature, when they authorize this and signed by the governor, don't they have the ability in the legislation to dictate what can and cannot be in advertising? When you say don't target young kids, it seems to me when you have Rob Gronkowski in an ad, who is wildly popular with young people, David Ortiz, maybe the most popular ball player of our lifetime, athletes are pretty popular with young people. Could they not say what you can? And could they also not require that you say you actually have a better chance of losing than you do of winning?
So I will say the legislature, in their back and forth, did what they could, and sometimes you intentionally leave things a little broad for regulations to figure it out, and for the Gaming Commission to have all these types of conversations with all stakeholders to get their perspective. And that's what they did yesterday, and they'll continue to do. But you raise a good point, and that's where we are really focused on. And maybe at moments we're alone in this, but whether it is experts or announcers, athletes, whoever being used to send people to various applications to place bets, that they shouldn't benefit. They shouldn't get paid, for example, of encouraging you to place a certain bet that will likely lose and get a percentage of those losses. They shouldn't get the money of encouraging folks not only to sign up, But taking, if that person, or if I placed a whole bunch of bets, for example, they shouldn't get a percentage of all the wages that were placed. Yes, we understand if you go on Instagram and you see an ad, fine, go click this button and look into placing a bet. But there should be some parameters around that where these third-party experts, influencers, or companies are not benefiting monetarily. So we are really, I like to think the office is at the forefront of trying to protect the consumers in this industry here that we know, of course, can have devastating effects on young people and residents in many ways. So we're doing our best to do what we can.
Miles is at the mic at the
Good to see
Boston
you,
Public
Miles.
Library.
Thank you.
Apparently you know all the questioners, do you not?
Well, from the community.
Okay, fine. Miles,
I will
welcome to the
continue
show.
to be an AG that's in the community. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you. On a very local level, what recourse, what remedy do constituents have when their local officials move forward on a project, on a mission that has clearly and already been vetted and deemed unacceptable by that community? In my case, I'm specifically referring to my neighborhood in West Roxbury. We're dealing with an ongoing mitigation problem on our main thoroughfare, Center Street. The city, back in 2019, under the Walsh administration, was going to move forward with the installation of bike lanes. It was rejected by the community. This new administration, to this point almost silently, is moving forward once again with plans to perhaps try to do it again. And
So what's your question? What recourse?
what recourse does the constituency have when their elected officials move forward on something that clearly the community has spoken out against?
I think some of it goes back to local authorities, right? So I was obviously on the city council. We had some examples of this. Community not happy with projects moving forward, et cetera. They testified, they showed up, they hired lawyers to challenge the city, which is not uncommon if their wishes were not followed. It's rare that maybe an AG's office would get involved. It depends. Obviously, we are involved in what's happening in Rockport because that is a public interest and public good conversation.
Yeah,
We're
public
required,
beaches, right? The public
required
beaches
to
there.
represent the Commonwealth there. But in this instance, I would need to know a little bit more with respect to the specifics on what was promised under Marty and what was promised under
How does someone like
Will.
Miles convey to your office the little bit more that might cause you to decide it's appropriate?
Right over
for you?
here.
No, I
Or
mean, they
in
don't just walk over to an aide. If someone, he can, but if somebody is listening, what do they do if they're in Miles' situation?
They can file a complaint. Let me make sure I have it right. They can
Okay.
file a complaint on the office. They can call the hotline 617. That's probody the best. I literally
Okay.
have 10 numbers here.
Okay, go ahead. What
But
is it?
727-8400 is probably the best. 617-727-8400 is probably the best way to lodge a complaint, and we can go from there.
But Miles, she's saying apparently you can talk to one of her coworkers because you happen to be here.
One
That's
of my
the way it
team
works.
members
That's right.
who's here. And I
Exactly.
will say, every time I come here, I come with team members
Great.
who are doing the work in partnership with me. I don't do it alone. And we can go from there. But locally, it is difficult. If it's a development or zoning decision decided by a board, et cetera, where the office can show up is how I talked about either Rockport or open meeting law violations, other things too. So we can get more information.
Good luck,
on
Miles.
us.
Thank
and
you
good
for
to see you.
being here. We appreciate it.
Here's another thing that we are talking a lot with listeners about, ticket pricing. I just got a text from Judy in Worcester who says, my granddaughter and I were trying to get tickets to see Hosier. I don't know that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, at the Bank Pavilion today, found a great seat for $149, but when it came to checkout, the Ticketmaster fees were $377. Judy wants to know if this is illegal, and she just wants to clarify this wasn't through a ticket broker, second-party kind of market, but through the Ticketmaster site. Boy, I didn't know you could do that either.
We can look into it. And I what was her name?
Judy from Worcester.
Judy, and I was just in Worcester. I share some of your concerns. And what I mean by that, whether it's airlines and fees or what she just mentioned, or just even trying to buy tickets recently for the family. You bought 2 tickets, went back to buy 2 more tickets, and the price shot up
Yeah.
in a matter of 2 minutes. for the same flight. So I said, well, wait a minute, I have questions around that. But I think it's something...
Excuse me, if you call the airline and say, this is Attorney General Andrea Campbell, do they answer your call a little bit more quickly? Or what? Are you on hold for 45 minutes?
You have to be careful in doing that.
Yeah.
And obviously the benefit I wouldn't want just for me, I'd want it for every consumer in Massachusetts. But we're looking into it. And why this, I like that she brought up this point, because one of the things that the office does really well, and she should also call us.
Okay.
617-727-8400.
727-8400,
Yes,
Judy.
because in certain instances, depending on the type of case, we've been able to call a vendor or someone else, insurance company, to literally get someone, a cruise line, whatever it is, to get someone's money back into their pocket if they felt they were legally charged something. So the office does it all the time in terms of constituent cases, the things you'll never read about because there's small dollar amounts from the media perspective, but from the consumer perspective, it's a lot of money. So call us. But one piece that I think is really important is the office, yes, we're focusing on making sure people know the office is accessible. We're focusing on safety in terms of guns and violence. We're focused on the well-being of our kids. But we're focused on the economics, too. The office does so much to put money back into the pockets of workers, of residents, elders, every single day. Wage theft, major issue. You go to work, you don't get paid. Everything around scamming folks. You paid for something. They said it was supposed to be this price. It was something different. In the context of insurance, so much. And so what I'm doing actually is hiring someone at the executive level in the office to be what I'm calling an economic mobility advisor, looking across every single bureau, what could we be proactively doing to help folks build wealth? Not just put a few dollars back in your pocket, build wealth. So take on things like this, price gouging in a systemic way. Look at ways in which, in communities of color, for example, it's still difficult to get a housing loan, or how your house is appraised. There are differences based on your race. I mean, there's so much to do in this context. And bringing on someone to own that, to do that in a way that I think will be unique. The AG's office isn't usually known as anything that involves economics. It's usually the governor or someone else. But let me tell you, folks, the Attorney General's office every day is helping to put money back into your pockets or proactively thwarting any scams that could take advantage of consumers. And so including in the context of big airline merges and everything else. So this is critical for the office. I wanted to be able to add that point based on that phone call, but she should call the office.
You know, talking about putting money in people's pockets, we were going to ask you at the end, but since it flows from what you just said, in addition to what you talked to Marjorie about at the top of the show about youth well-being and the training and more that's being done around hate and school sports, that sort of thing, it's the 9th summer of the summer jobs program. It's whatever it is. Tell
Summer
people
youth jobs.
what the deal is, who's eligible, what the deadline for application is, et cetera.
Absolutely. So we just put out some grants for youth jobs. These are summer jobs which offer young people an opportunity to work in their community in jobs that promote good nutrition, physical health, healthy living. There are grants that are funded through settlements that the office gets. So it's a continuation of the work we've done in the past, which is really exciting. And so their application is on our website. If you just go to mass.gov/ I would say GOV. It's longer. It's 2023 Healthy Summer Youth Jobs.
That's hopeless.
But if you
Can they
found
Google
exactly,
summer? Okay.
if you just look online at the AG's office,
Okay.
you will be able to find it.
Fair enough. Molly and Townsend, you've been very patient. You're on with the Attorney General. Welcome.
Oh my gosh, hi. This is so exciting.
Oh my gosh.
You called us. You know that, Molly, right?
I know, but I got
I'm
picked.
kidding. Go ahead.
Hi, Ms. Campbell.
Hi,
Thank you for
Molly.
having
Oh
me
my
on.
gosh, Molly, look at us.
Go ahead.
I am a new mom. I have a two.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Molly,
I
we
work
lost you.
full-time.
Molly, after you said you're a new mom, your phone cut
Yeah,
out. So
repeat.
tell us what you said after that.
Oh, I have a 2-year-old and a 10-month-old. I work full-time, and I'm a homeowner in the state, a new homeowner in the state. And I have been struggling massively to get the medical health leave and the bonding leave available to me under PSMLA in Massachusetts. So this is my second time around with this process, and it has been very hard to get specific assistance from the office itself. The guidance, not to go into too many details, The guidance that I have received has resulted in conflicting information. Most recently, I was advised to file an appeal on my claim, which I did February 2nd, and I was told I would receive a decision if I would be approved or not, or if it would have to go to a subsequent hearing within 4 weeks. I called back at the beginning of March and was told at that time to just give it some more time. So I called back today and was told that my appeal was marked withdrawn by the claimant on February 6th, which I did not do. So I was advised again to call the appeals office, and they told me just to start the whole process all over again, which now will have been the third time.
Molly, if I can interrupt you, I think the Attorney General has some advice as to...
Yes,
sure.
Our team member is here, so if you could stay on, Molly, we could get more details.
Okay.
Obviously, get your phone number and call you back and look into this for you.
So, Molly, do not go away. We'll get your contact information. We'll immediately give it to the Attorney General's staff, and you'll hear from them.
And we will follow up, Molly, okay?
And congratulations on the kids in the house, and good luck with
And
this.
thanks for calling in.
Thank you very much, Molly from Townsend. We appreciate it.
Rob in the North End is a big fan of yours, Attorney General. He says that when they lived in Dorchester, they were very well represented by you, and they offer congratulations. But oops, oh, there he is back again. Okay,
Robert?
Yes, Rob is how he signed it. But he said his landlord is yet to apply for a lease renewal for April. We moved to this present apartment due to lead poisoning of our child. The concern we may be discriminated against due to an investigation by the state lead team. I'm a Marine Corps veteran. My wife is a French African immigrant, American citizen. Our 3 children are biracial. The landlord is not the owner. What are our rights?
If we could get his contact information, we can follow up, because obviously it involves a specific landlord.
Yeah.
But it's an opportunity to share that hotline again in terms of the consumer hotline, 617-727-8400, because at the number one types of cases we're getting right now, and that has changed since previous years, is cases involving landlord-tenant relationships. And folks dealing with all types of things. I gave a security deposit, was supposed to get it back, I didn't get it back, the conditions in which someone's living, lead, mold, pest, you name it. So I want folks to call our office, because the sanitary code has been updated. There are new requirements starting April 1st for tenants. Most probably don't know about them. And if you are having any type of issue with your landlord, call us. And we've been really helpful in addressing those issues in significant ways. And the office is really responsive. But housing concerns, major issue, I understand that. So please call. And thank you for the kind words, Rob.
We'll pass along the information. 877-301-8097. Where are we going next for the Attorney General colleagues?
We're keeping us in suspense, Jim.
What?
They don't want to tell us.
Can you pick somebody, please? There we are. Jonathan in Sherborne, you're on with the Attorney General. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Big fan, Margie and Jim.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Nice to talk to you, Attorney General. Our family, going back to the healthcare crisis in this country, our family has certainly not been immune to that, and it has resulted in huge amounts of money in private pay, relentless chases to get money back from the insurance company, none of which have been successful to date. My question, I guess, is two-part. One is, why are the insurance companies, or is there work being done around the insurance coverage to ensure that a much broader swath of mental health coverage is covered, mental health issues are covered? Mm-hmm. And the second is, why is it that so many healthcare providers are allowed to insist on private pay when they should be providing a public service?
Jonathan, thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. And if, I don't know if Jonathan hung up or
He's
not,
there.
But Jonathan, if you have specific questions around your specific insurance company, stay on the line so we can get your information to look into that. I remember being on the
Stick around, Jonathan.
Yes,
don't go away. We'll put you on hold.
Don't go away.
Yep.
But on the larger questions, earlier talked about mental health access. I'm still in the process of hiring, so literally the folks that lead the various bureaus, including the Healthcare Bureau, interviewing in close to having someone run that bureau, because some of the folks went with our new governor. But the topic of discussion has been, as we make sure, how do we make sure that folks have access to mental health services, all types of healthcare services, that it's affordable, that's accessible, and there is absolutely a role for the Healthcare Bureau and the office to play, whether it's around cost, dealing with insurance companies. I mentioned reimbursement rates earlier, expanding access to certain types, or expanding healthcare provisions within the insurance companies. So these are conversations we'll have with the legislature, with the governor, with a lot of our large healthcare institutions already. We are already having some of these conversations, but a plan, I think, is due, and there's a role for the AG's office to play. I was just in the State House yesterday, meeting with the Speaker, meeting with the Senate President, not only with respect to the budget for the office itself, but talking about where are the areas of focus. Nursing homes, elders, care, top of the list, everything related to guns and gun enforcement, mental health in the context of what you just mentioned. So more to come. And I do know it can be difficult to navigate insurance companies, even if you are covered, and not necessarily to get the benefits that you think you have from your insurance company. If you think that's the case, call us. We have worked with insurance companies. We have helped folks navigate some of these concerns to success. So please reach out to the office.
How's the first couple of months been, by the way?
I love my job. On the days that are difficult, obviously starting in Worcester at a funeral is never easy. But I wake up every day. It's an honor and a privilege to serve in this role. I tell the governor, she can't come back because I know I have the better job. If I saw the president or the vice president or anyone else, I would say the same. The AGs across the country, given the issues we're talking about, discrimination, predatory practices and scams, and people trying to steal our folks' money, taking advantage of elders, which is a major issue, our young people struggling in terms of access to health care, bullying, you name it, discrimination, the Supreme Court going in the wrong direction. The list is long. AGs are going to have to step up. And those who are bold and courageous, who have a sense of empathy and morality and compassion. In Massachusetts, we've always been a leader, so we'll continue to do that to set the way. I get to do that every day with an incredible team of folks. I am so blessed.
How old are your kids?
3 and 5.
Oh, my
Does the
gosh.
5 know what you do for a living?
He does. I went to his school and talked to his kindergarten class. And it's I know, oh, wow. I was like, what do you say? And I was, what does Mama do? She helps people. And they can say Attorney General. Aiden's 3. Mama's the attorney.
Oh,
yes,
that's great.
But they have a sense, my 5-year-old, a greater sense, and that Mama's going to work. So it's wonderful.
So the 5-year-olds expected to come in with a uniform as the general with some kind of
But
cap
they had a lot of questions, and it matters, right, to the folks in the class, and then particularly the young girls to see me there, and to my son too. But it's at the end of the day, we're in public service to help people, and that's what it should be about.
So give that number again, which is the sort of general consumer
Oh, the general,
number. Yeah.
617-727-8400.
And if people want to go to your website to sort of fish around and see what...
mass.gov/AGO. I will tell you it can be difficult to navigate. I'm already talking to our comms team on ways to make us more accessible on the website, more user-friendly. So things to come and figuring out how to do that. So if it's difficult to navigate that website, 617-727-8400. Please don't hesitate to call. Even when you think maybe there's not an issue there, call and let us talk you through that and determine that with you.
And make sure you provide beach access in Rockport and beyond, okay?
Yeah.
We're working on it. We're working on it.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
Andrea Campbell, it's great to see you.
It is great to see you.